All right. So we are live. I'm super excited. This feels like a very fortuitous situation. We had this live scheduled for a week ago, I believe.
We did.
And, it didn't happen. It's fine. So let's go into introductions. I know that folks will kind of pop in when they can, and it's okay. But for the replay, especially, I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Carrolee Moore. I am the founder and CEO of the Podcast Pitching Society, where we help experts to get found, chosen, and paid using strategic storytelling on other people's podcasts. And a little birdie told me that there's a DIY Black Friday offer that just dropped like a few minutes ago from the Podcast Pitching Society. A little birdie told me that. But,
Ooh, let's go. All right. Well, and I'm Casey Dunn, and I am the Chief Sales Officer and one of the founders of Podfluence. And we help podcasters who want to become the thought leader their industry needs. We help them with everything from the creation of the podcast all the way to the distribution and growth of it. So I'm super excited today to, go over all of the 5 growth steps and everything. I'll throw it back to you, Carolee.
Awesome. So I believe in giving a roadmap. Every single time you get on a call with me, there is a actual agenda. I'm going to tell you what to expect so that there aren't any surprises. So just so you know, we're going to break down first and foremost storytelling. Then we're going to go into the reason you should know your offer and what that actually means. Again, we're going to do it from a podcast guesting and a podcast production podcast hosting standpoint, each of these. So you're going to get a lot of great advice right now. And then we're going to go into being prepared. What does that mean for both sides of those, both sides of the coin? We're going to talk about promoting your show post-show or promoting your guest appearance post-show. And then finally, we're going to talk about tracking your ROI. After that, we are going to tell you the different ways because hopefully you've stayed around and gotten a lot from it. And if you're interested in becoming a podcast guest or starting your own show, there are 2 options here. So, of course, we're going to give you all the game and then tell you how you can actually speed up all of these things by using external help. But Casey, if you want to jump right into number 1, talking about storytelling.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So storytelling. And, the thing I like to think about here is that the guest and the host need to be working in tandem to tell stories. It's not that one person tells a story and then they throw it over to the other person and the other person tells a story. It's that we're working together. It's sort of like a dance. And so when it comes to storytelling, there is a clear structure that is time tested and honored that makes a good story. And so this all comes down to a character having a misbelief. Now, what exactly is a misbelief? Well, that's something that the character believes is true in the world that they learn is not true. So it's a world belief that is challenged. So one of the great examples is, Luke Skywalker. I always go back to this because it's just one of the most fundamental and kind of everybody knows it, where Luke believes that he's destined for a life of mediocrity on this planet, and he thinks that that's how he's going to spend out the rest of his days, and that there's just that's what his life is. And then all of a sudden this old wise man comes in and leads him on this journey, and his misbelief of how the world is challenged, and who he is in the world is challenged. Now, what does all of that mean for podcast hosts? Well, podcast hosts need to view their guests as people who have gone on these life journeys and have had these misbeliefs and have had those challenged and have had to relook at their world. So you always need to be looking as a host at how you can have those conversations with your guests to identify what those misbeliefs were, and then go into the storytelling of how those misbeliefs were challenged. So that's really that is the fundamental of good storytelling, is that little piece right there of a character has a misbelief that's challenged, and then the character's problem is resolved by the misbelief being changed to a true vision of the world. Carrolee, have you had any examples recently of like a story where you've heard like a misbelief challenged?
Mm. So one of my clients, actually, his whole idea is that you can make big decisions pretty quickly. And his concept is a lot of times we're making decisions for based on ideas that we don't actually want. Like, we're trying to solve for problems that are a part of our lives right now, the life that we actually don't want. And so instead of making the big decision to live the life that we truly want, we're kind of cobbling together and duct taping together all of these things. So he talks a lot about how for his life, he dropped out of school in the 4th grade because his parents gave him the choice to, right? Big decision.
Wow.
And yeah, huge decision. Didn't actually graduate from high school, ended up getting his diploma and went straight into the Army, and made multiple decisions as he was kind of going through life that are huge decisions. One of them being making a decision to move out of the United States to a foreign country in 30 days with his wife and 2 kids.
Yeah. I mean, and so like,
You know what I mean? So like his idea of what the life that he thought he was supposed to live, and then his parents coming in like, actually, you don't have to go to school.
Yeah. These things are, that's such a good one as far as misbeliefs of, because everyone listening to him speak, like, you want to hear about, okay, well, these are the ways that life is set out for you. And these are the differences in how that person executed on their own life. So once we have that misbelief locked down, and that's something that, when you're preparing to talk with a guest or things like that, you want to be writing down, what are those misbeliefs? It's something that we always put within our guest dossiers for our clients. But then you want to think about, once you have that, you need to know what it's called is it's basically a repeatable cycle that will happen within these interviews, which is it's 4 steps. You have your hook, you have the story section, you have education, and then you have a call to action or a second or a move on to the next hook. And so the hook is all about getting that really quick soundbite or piece of information that establishes what we're talking about, that piques people's interest and gets them engaged. Then the story is a little bit of the background on it. So with your example, it could be, the hook is, now I understand that you actually dropped out of school at the 4th grade. And like that immediately gets people interested and engaged. Then you switch to the story, which is the background of learning that his parents were the real emphasis on why he'd made that decision. And then you get the education component of the misbelief being resolved, which is, right, well, the reason that he was able to make those choices is because life actually isn't this just step-by-step process. There are these moments where you can make a decision of how you want to live your own personal life. And then the call to action would be, moving on from that, or it would be taking you into the next piece of that conversation.
Yeah, that's actually really great. And it leads me into my point from the guest perspective in being specific, right? A lot of times when people are telling stories, especially experts, they go into these generalities and talking about these big whatever, because that's what corporate kind of tells you you're supposed to do. Like, all the people in 70, like, tell me about Bob. Matter of fact, tell me about you, and tell me like specifics about like what happened, what changed, friction, like all of those things. And it makes for great storytelling. It also, if you're doing it right, it's giving an idea of what you actually do for your job or for your company, right? So you're giving stories, you're telling strategic stories, which is another point that I wanted to make, is being strategic while giving specificity. Because then it becomes wholly and specifically you, right? No one else can tell those stories in the way that you do because it is your experience or the experiences from your clients or results that you've been able to get and see. And being specific really, it sounds really simple, really silly, but you'll be surprised in listening to conversations, especially if you go back and like listen to old conversations you've had on podcasts. Anyone who's watching this, and listen to how general you sound, because
Yes.
we do that just kind of on default. You almost have to like intentionally tell yourself, okay, I'm going to go on here and I'm going to tell specific stories. And in each of these specific stories, I'm going to use your kind of idea of creating a framework for this. You want to be able to tell what was the conflict, what was the issue, what did you do to help resolve that issue, and then what was the result from that issue. It's kind of like how they tell you to do in a job interview, but this one, you're telling it through a performance. Your body is going to be moving while you're talking. Your face is moving. Your hand is moving, not like crazy, but like
Right.
to really sell the story and engage. You want to make sure that storytelling is not just the words that you're saying. It's how you actually are moving your body, like the cadence of the words that you're using, what words you're emphasizing as you're talking, right? One of the things that I think people miss a lot is the introduction.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times people come on. My name is Carrolee Moore. I work in Podcast Pitching Society, and this is what I do, and like that's it.
Yeah.
And you miss the opportunity from the beginning to tell a story. And why a story in the beginning to tie together your childhood experiences or whatever it was that like led you to do the work you're doing. It's important because you then tell the host where to go.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
a layup for them to be like, oh, pull a piece of the thing that you talked about. And if you're strategic, and you should be, in kind of seeding through both your expertise and your offer and your introduction, no matter where the host decides to go, it's going to be advantageous to you because it's going to be something that you really want to talk about, right? Something that you find exciting, and it's going to lead for you to be able to talk about your offer and it not sound salesy. So storytelling, I think you're really, really spot on, is to like focus in on the tension. Because the
Yes.
more you focus in on the tension, the misconception, the idea, like, this is what people are getting wrong in my industry right now. This is what, you know what I mean? When you do that and you consistently are putting forward new and different perspectives, then the host gets excited. And then it's a really great conversation because now we're not just going back and forth and trading pleasantries. It could end up being, I've had situations where the host disagreed with me. I'm like, yes, come on, like, let's do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that makes for a really great conversation.
People
Because you can
want
split
to
through it.
feel your engagement and energy.
Absolutely.
And the only way that can happen is by something unexpected happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so oftentimes like you listen to podcasts, and I think that's why it gets such a bad rep, is because there are boring hosts and boring guests.
Yeah.
And you go on there and you're talking. Listen, you can be talking about neuroscience, I mean, really quote unquote nerdy stuff, and still make it exciting. And that's really, you're going to see the difference between someone who's successful as a guest, who's getting asked to come back, right? Who's getting DMs after they've gone on a podcast, be like, hey, we really need you to come and speak at this conference and speak to our people, or whatever the case is. You have to sell it. I always say this because it's true. You go on a podcast, that is a performance. You're going on there as like mini keynote. You're not going on there just to have like a cute little conversation and be done. You want to be memorable. You want to be funny. All of the things that you would do if you're going in front of someone, in front of an audience for a keynote, you need to be doing on a podcast. Because that podcast lives for years and years and years, evergreen. That keynote may or may not have been like recorded. So
yeah, it's so true. Awesome. Well,
okay.
should we move on to the next one? So the next one is knowing your offer, which is one that I am really passionate about.
Same.
I think it is so important that every podcast has a reason to exist beyond just the podcast itself. And so what I always say is that there are two ways to identify your podcast offer. And that's either, and this is, specifically for hosts, which is the podcast identifies the product or the product identifies the podcast. So what does that mean? Well, for podcasts that are based around entertainment, the product will normally be merchandise, communities, or other items that really are discovered through the podcaster's relationship with their audience.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to spend a little less time on that because I think that, the people that are here today and that will be watching this are a little more focused on that they have a business and they have an expertise that they're selling. And so that would be the other side of this coin, which is that the service or product determines what the podcast is around. And so for podcasts that are centered around a business, the product or service is already something that's laid out and pretty clear. And so it's like, if you're a lawn service person and then you have a podcast, well, your podcast is probably all around tips and tricks for how to make a homeowner's lawn look the best or something like that. And so really what we want to focus on isn't exactly identifying what the product or service is, but what the offer is. And I distinguish those because they really are two different things. Product or service has a million different things that goes into it. An offer is something that you are presenting and needs to be crystal clear. The way I like to describe this is everybody knows what an elevator pitch is. Well, an offer needs to be an elevator pitch if the elevator's brakes broke and it's plummeting to the ground, and the only way you can survive is if you convince that other person in the elevator with you that it's more important to listen to you tell them about your product than it is for them to solve getting out of this elevator.
Oh, that's good.
That's how important and visceral you need to make this.
That's
it should
good.
be one sentence that makes somebody go immediately, oh, that's for me. I need that. That's what an offer is. It's something that's succinct and easy to convey through an audio medium.
Listen, mic drop. So my 2 cents for this for the guests is we hear a lot about lead magnets and how you're supposed to like do lead magnets and do all the things. I'm going to potentially share a controversial take on this. If you have an offer and messaging around that offer that is clear, you know exactly who you're targeting, they, have given you enough information so you know the messaging and all the things, you don't need a lead magnet. What you need is a page that as soon as the person hears you on that podcast, they click on that, the next step is for them to book a call on your calendar, period. If
that is
you don't have that,
I like
it. If you don't have that, if you're still trying to decide and figure out what your messaging is, if you're still trying to figure out how you want to reach your ideal client or what they need, etc., this is what lead magnets are great for, right? Because then you can test different messaging, you can test different kind of entry points and all of that. And it helps you to then decide, okay, I've tried the quiz, or I've tried this type of quiz. I've tried a mini email course or whatever. I've tried these different things. I'm getting information and data about what's working and what's not. What's the messaging that's working? What's the angle? What's the pain? What's the biggest pain? Because that's when you start to see more downloads, then you can say, okay, that's the biggest pain. This is the reason why we launched what we launched today for a DIY as the pitching piece, because we realized from doing enough market research, that's the biggest pain, at least what they think it is, right? Is like, hey, I don't want to pitch, or I don't know how to pitch, or whatever the case is, right? Figuring that out, then you can go into right from the podcast straight into a call. Now, you're going to get a bunch of more people to download your freebie than you are getting them to get on your call. But those are two different people.
Yeah.
One person, if they're self-selecting into your sales process, that means they know that they're in pain, right? They understand like what is happening. They understand that you might have a solution. And so honestly, they've already gone probably 60% of the way. So that sales call is now a much warmer touch because they've heard you on that podcast. And if you have backends, and we'll talk a little bit more later about setting up your backend and making sure it's set, they're not going to jump straight from that sales page to a call with you. There's going to be several steps in between that gives them more information about whatever your service is, about you, getting them super familiar with the idea of like, hey, this person is absolutely the person I need to solve this problem. And so they go from 30 to 45 minutes of listening to you be awesome and talk about all the things. And then they go through a whole process of hearing you talk about your solutions even more. So by the time they're on a sales call, now they're up to 70, 80%. And it's all at that point about, do they have the funds? And if you're doing it right on the sales page, you will already have figured that out. So that's my 2 cents on that. It's a little bit different than what is typically told, especially from podcast booking agents. But if you have a proven product, proven messaging, et cetera, just get people on your calendar.
I think that's super right for guests. I think for podcast hosts, it's important to have that lead magnet because people are consistently coming to your podcast. Like at least that's the goal of the podcast, is that it's building a regular listenership. And so you want to have different tools in your tool belt for different people, because some people will be those decision makers. Other people need a longer lag time to like do research or those types of things. And that's where lead magnet's super helpful. But I do think that on the guest side, people make a lot of mistakes in trying to sell too many little things rather than one primary offer. And so I think that makes a ton of sense, because like there's so many times where somebody will be finishing up with one of our hosts and the host will ask them for, like what they're selling or what they want to get across at the end. And the person will give 3 different things, which is like, follow me on social media, check out my lead magnet, and also I sell this. And that is such a disservice, because 3 call to actions is way worse than one really strong one.
Yeah, because they're not going to make a decision, because a confused mind does not make a decision. And if you're giving someone multiple different paths and it's like, okay, I don't know, so I'm not going to do anything. Versus it's like, no, it's one sales page and that's the only thing that they go to. And on that sales page, you're going to have social proof, aka testimonials. You're going to have a breakdown of what your business is and the steps that you take. Like, you want to give them all of the sauce up front and then qualify them through a form. Doesn't have to be a super long form, but after that, you already know at this point, they know what your offer is. They know kind of sort of around what the pricing is, and they understand, hey, we only work with these types of people. We want these types of clients. We want these types of whatever. Hey, do you have these resources to actually afford us? Like, you're doing all of that work up front. And I know that a lot of people get nervous about that because you want more people but here's the thing. I don't want more of the wrong people. If you have a whole bunch of tire kickers on your email list and you have 10,000 people on your email list versus someone who has like really solid prospects and it's like 500 people on their email list, I'll take that any day. Right? Because at some point those people are going to close. And that's the biggest part for me when it comes to, knowing your offer, is understanding kind of where you're at, is like, is your stuff strong enough to where you can just be like, listen, we're going to skip through all this stuff. You've heard me, buy the book or, buy the program, whatever it is. Like, hey, whatever it is, just sell it up front or kick them to a sales call. That is absolutely possible. And I would say more profitable in the long run, instead of you going the lead magnet route. If you already know that your messaging is like good, AKA if you've made over $100,000 with your current offer, I would strongly suggest that you go straight to a sales call.
Yeah.
Right. Because you've already done enough to know what your people are expecting language wise, what their challenges are, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So All
I think
right.
that's awesome. Well, I think that does kind of naturally take us into being prepared, s-
Yeah.
which, so this is kind of a continuation of what we were just talking about, which is, how do you make sure that you really are prepared? What I like to think about with this is that you want what we mean by being prepared is making sure that you're ready to maximize when an episode goes live. And so one of the examples that I talk about is this was like 3 months ago. I was talking with a potential client, and we were talking, and he had 33,000 followers on or subscribers on YouTube. And I was like, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And I was like looking through, and I noticed, that he wasn't getting very many views on his videos.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, so something happened here. And finally I found out which was that he had one interview that went bonkers viral. It got
Mhm.
26 million views,
Wow.
and it brought in all of those subscribers. The next video got 1,000 views. The video after that, 300, and the one after that, 33.
Mm.
And so that's what we want to avoid, is having that huge opportunity that gets squandered because we don't have the preparation and the backbone to actually support that type of views. And so what that comes down to is making sure that you have that back end funnel. I'm huge on funnels. I do actually,
Okay.
I think especially for hosts, going from podcast, or really from social media to podcast to lead magnet to newsletter to website to sale, is a really
Mhm.
strong foundation that any host should have as their primary sales funnel, because it makes a huge difference. And then you need to make sure that you have, when those episodes go live, number one, you need to make sure that your episodes are consistent. We have, I know that we all have varied interests, but a brand needs to not have varied interests. It needs to have a very clear value proposition that it's
Mhm.
offering to people. There, I've seen so many podcasts that really struggle to maintain listenership because they'll have a bunch of episodes on health and wellness, and then all of a sudden they'll have an episode on AI, and those just don't help each other. And so that consistency and that consistency of message is going to make a huge difference when somebody really loves an episode and then goes and checks your channel. They do the
Mm.
hard work of pressing subscribe, but then they see, oh, there's more episodes that I can go click onto. And guess what? Then if you start having that where somebody watches a video and then clicks on another video of yours, the algorithm loves that. There is nothing that makes any social media platform more happy than people staying on the platform longer by clicking from one video to the next. And so then you will get way more, you'll get more of the algorithm pushing your content out there, and you'll get more engagement from it, which just creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of growth. So it's really important to make sure that you have that preparation.
Yeah. So mine, I'll start with the one that's furthest away from this, and I'll come back closer to what you're talking about
Yeah.
on the kind of guest side.
Mhm.
Be prepared, meaning like, hey, uh, do you have good internet service? Close all
Totally.
your browser, like all the other browsers, all the other things, just leaving the one podcast window that you're going, whether it's Riverside or Zoom or whatever, like leaving that open and closing everything else down so that you, or plugging into your internet or Ethernet
Ethernet,
versus
yeah.
just Wi-Fi, right? That's the first thing, like basic audio. If you don't have a mic, and for a while I didn't, make sure that your computer is close enough to you so you're not like all the way back here trying to talk to your computer mic that's like, a mile away,
Or just
because
get a
then
pair of headphones.
get some
Headphones look
headphones.
okay and they sound so much better.
I don't like the way that they look when
I
I'm a
just
woman.
yeah, I am not saying
It's
they
a
look
different.
the best, but I am saying that, like, I would rather that look of an AirPod in your ear and sound
Yeah,
be good.
that is very true. I would say AirPod, probably not the ones with the, headphones with the strings, because
No.
again, my the idea of being prepared is like branded. Now, you don't have to come with the same color every single time. I think that's, there are people who do that, and that's great. For us that are busy and have other things and whatever, you just want to make sure that you're polished, right? If you have hair, make sure that it's combed or it's coiffed well, that it's not sticking out and just, because what happens as human beings, especially if it's on video, now I'm not paying attention to what you're saying. I'm looking at the thing that's just like poking out, just like not in line. And I know this sounds really vain, all the things, but let's be real. Let's be honest. As a business, as a business owner, you're representing your brand and representing your business. You need to make sure that you're showing up prepared. I cannot tell you how many people have like the fake background on podcast interviews that I think is just a bit unprofessional. I don't think it's okay for there to be all kinds of stuff happening while you're on the podcast. One of the things that the reasons why I'm saying that is because you want to, and we'll talk about this later, repurpose it for other things. It's harder to do that when you don't like the way that your face looks because you didn't take the time to like, wash your face, moisturize, like do like the basic things. Or you have an issue with the background because now it's just messy and it's all over the place and you don't have a way to just kind of like crop that. It's thinking about those things beforehand. The other thing about being prepared is think about and write down your stories. We actually have a proprietary story bank that we give to our clients for them to fill out in a way that actually gets them to think not just about, okay, I've done these things, but what do these things mean for the people that I want to help? And how can I actually express this in a way where, okay, they're going to be able to see me as like an interesting person. They're going to hear my expertise, and they're also going to see themselves in this and know that I have a solution that they can get. So that is a huge piece of this, is just like being prepared for that. Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the back end. How many times, because you're a producer, so you probably, how many times have you heard someone, even if they didn't have 3 different things, the only thing that they said is like, follow me on social media as like a call to action? So often, it's painful. And I just like, it's such a wasted opportunity. Yeah. I mean, it's basically a waste of going on that show. Yeah. And so I'll give you an example, and then I'm going to use myself as an example. One of the biggest shows that I've been on is with my business coach. And I remember I pitched her to be on the show. She said, yes. Okay. We're going to be doing in person. And so I actually bought a new outfit, like spent more time doing my makeup because I knew it was going to be on camera and like have all the, lights and the glitz and all the things. And I was like, oh yeah, Carrolee, we're doing this. And I practiced some of the things that I wanted to say. I went over some of the stories and like wins that we had at the time that I wanted to make sure to kind of weave in there. And as I was answering the questions in my mind already, I was like, no ums, no Carrolee, because I knew as soon as this was done what my plan was. This was going to go everywhere, not just in social media, everywhere. And because of the preparation, she launched the show on YouTube as like a premiere. While the show was premiering, someone was in my DMs on LinkedIn. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's the power of it. And because after the whole thing, and we'll go straight into the promotion post show, so I'll continue with this later. But because of the repurposing of this stuff, I ended up with like 11 sales calls in total from that one show. Because she had the numbers, and I knew it was a bigger show, and I knew majority of the people listening were my ideal clients. I was not going to go on the show and just like be like, it's okay. No. And made sure that they gave both my link to schedule a sales call, and if people wanted to do the done for you, the freebie, they could,
Mhm.
right? And people followed. That was like one of the bigger opportunities I had, and you have to leverage it. And I think a lot of times people are asking for these big opportunities. Like you said it, right? Would you be ready if someone was like, well, tomorrow you're going on Mel Robbins' podcast?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I would be ready, and yet there would be so much that I would need to do to make sure that but that's the thing, is that you have to have a foundation, so that, because like if you have that foundation, then you can do that extra work to make sure that you're as prepared as possible. But if you don't have these things already working for themselves, if you don't already have the lead magnet, if you don't already have the newsletter, or if you don't already have those types of things that will take somebody from a podcast into your system, then you're then that then you're completely not prepared. If you have those things, then you can make like, okay, well, I know I'm going to be on Mel Robbins' podcast. Well, now I need to make stuff that's specific to Mel Robbins' target audience, so that when they get there, they see as seen on Mel Robbins, and they see, she's all about like self-health and self-help. And so you have things that are aimed at that, all of that type of stuff you need to have prepared, because you can't just have your normal things. Those you have to have, but you want to also have these other elements that really boost that opportunity.
Yeah, that you actually hit a really good and interesting point. If you're doing niche podcasts, which is our specialty, so for instance, you're really going after the legal community. So you're wanting to go on podcasts that are either done by attorneys or for attorneys, et cetera. Then
Yeah.
you want to make sure that your social media campaign for that month or 2 months or however long that campaign is, when those podcasts are going live, you want them people that come back to your social and be like, oh, this person specializes in helping, even if you don't, but you're running a campaign for them to see what the solutions may be that you have specifically for them. And so you hit a really big nail on the head for that. And that's kind of what happened with that podcast I mentioned, where folks from that podcast came back to my social media and just saw me in action. Like, oh, so she's actually walking her talk. She's like, she snipped it same day, already had snippets, like a lot. Right. So they're seeing that, like, okay, I believe you. Right. Because I'm seeing that.
And that is a huge thing, is that they get there and they see like-minded stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge thing that is really important for the podcast host as well, which is you don't just create the long form episode. You need to create 3 to 5 snippets or cut downs from that episode.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm curious,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to selecting the cut downs, as you call them, what are some of the things you kind of think about while you're doing that? So I think it's important. There must be some formulas or best practices, etc.
100%. So the top one is value. The cut down needs to offer value in and of itself. It needs to be there. Somebody needs to watch it and immediately go, oh, I can learn something out of watching this, because that's really what social media is there for these days. It's either connection or valuable information. And for most of the people who we're both talking to, it's got to be that value first proposition. And one of the things I'm a true believer in is that you don't just need to take just that snippet of the podcast. You might want to do a little extra work to make that piece succeed, which is making sure that that hook is really, really powerful, because that hook is going to determine whether people stay around. And sometimes just taking that conversation, you don't get the best hook possible, because maybe the host doesn't ask the question in the right way, or it's not set up in exactly how you want it to be. So instead, what I recommend is if that hook isn't as strong as it could be, record another hook afterwards and make that hook really, really strong, and then go into the cut down or snippet. It doesn't take that much extra work because you're making 3 to 5 videos. And so that's, 9 to 12 or 12 to 15 seconds of footage that you need to record, because you just need to record that hook. So
That's
write
good.
the hooks, you're wearing the same outfit, record that hook really quick, and then go into the clip.
So you're saying this is for guests or podcast hosts, and this is really
Either one.
good, right? Are you saying the same day that you record this, like,
I'm
or
saying
you're saying just go back into the same outfit and do that again?
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
if you do know the same day, oh, these are the types of clips that I want to take that I think are really valuable, awesome. If not, then the day that you get that podcast, whether it's just put out there, or what's better is if you can get it from the person ahead of time so that you can coordinate release, then you go through and mark down which parts you want to turn into cut downs, and then you record it.
That's good. That's good. That's an original hot take. I've never heard that before. To add the,
I think it's
you see B-rolls, all the things, but I've never heard of like recording and put.
Yeah, we have to continue to evolve how we maintain people's engagement and how we get people's engagement when they're just scrolling through their feed, because it's going to keep getting harder and harder. And so we have to find new ways. And trust me when I say the top players, they are not, not everything is just presented accurately. It's all being edited and reworked and everything else. So, we've got to play by some of those rules, which is just giving our stuff the best possible chance of succeeding.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. We've definitely, even on the guest side, we've done that where it's just like maybe piecing together. So like little jump cuts just to make sure that it's poppier.
Yep.
And it's not even just like the whatever. It's just, is it hitting? Because we're so used to it now. It's, you know what I mean? Your condition. It's kind of similar to like the LinkedIn post format. We're used to the choppy text at this point, whereas that was not the norm 15 years ago.
Yeah, no, you just can't have dead space, and you can't have moments that are filled by fluff anymore. It has to get straight to the point.
Yes, and keep kind of, which is, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm just hoping that, we don't turn into like robots.
I think that might be too late, but good hope.
Hey, okay. Change the subject. I don't want okay. So we're heading into, and you can kick this off, promotion post-show.
Yeah. So this is something that I think is really valuable and sort of underutilized. Like, I think everyone would be surprised with how many times people record something and then the host and guest never talk again. And so there is so much value to be had in collaborating on posts, to be diving into each other's comments, to really be boosting each other up. And that's the same for if one show has way more followers than the other, than if they both have the same amount of followers. Like, this is definitely an industry where like all ships like help each other rise. Like, that we need to be working together. So the strategy that I think is, so let's say, so the episode's created, most likely the host is their team is going to create those 3 to 5 cut downs. What should happen is that then they should also share the full video with that guest. The guest should then also create 3 to 5 videos, and then tell each other, communicate with each other the content calendar, what the output is going to be over the course of that week that the episode goes up, so that, number one, you're not sort of cannibalizing each other's posts, but also so that you can make sure that you're helping each other's posts. So then you go and you post those. And like I said, like make sure, on social media that you're selecting collaborating on those so that both audiences are notified. Make sure that
Right.
you're in those comments, reacting and talking to each other and talking to other people commenting. Get those posts to have as much engagement early as possible. And uh, then also make sure that just the content aligns with each other. So making sure that
Yeah.
you don't both choose the same segments, those types of things, those
Hmm.
easy things, so that instead you're able to maximize the view potential.
That's good. I don't think people think about that. Where it's like, okay, if the host and the guest are both posting the same clip, it's not really doing as much as if you had two really good clips where the host was posting one and the guest is posting another. Um, yeah, that's another good gem, I think. Simple, but also just like, oh, I didn't think about that.
So many
The
of these
other,
things are simple. They
yeah,
really
right.
are.
It's just it's a lot when you think about, which is why they hire us.
Yeah.
When you think about all the things that you have to do, it the little things start to kind of pile up, right?
Yeah. There's a reason
Um,
burnout is so widespread in this industry.
oh, 1,000%, 1,000%. And to do it well and to do it consistently well is also incredibly difficult. The other thing that I would add to that when it comes to repurposing things, everyone at this point, when you talk about podcast guesting, if you're familiar with it, we talk about social media, and that's great. But again, we talked about this at the top of the hour. Like everything has to be, well, to me, lead back to ROI, lead back to some level of business growth, right? And so you have a podcast tour that you go on. So you've been now on 10 podcasts. Instead of just letting them live out in the world, make a playlist. I actually have a Spotify playlist with all of the podcasts I've ever been on. Make a
Mhm.
YouTube playlist where all of your video podcasts are in one place. What can you do with those things, Carrolee? Send it as an introduction for when you get a new client and just be like, hey, welcome to the Podcast Business Society. This is our library of content where we training where you can learn about right? And it's stuff that you've already recorded. You don't have to do it again. It's in one place and you're able to have them kind of go through. What does that do? Small wins in the early parts of your contract. As you're starting to do the work, the kind of monotonous, like, oh my gosh, they're still hopefully looking at those videos and kind of getting a better sense of what they can expect, and also starting to build more rapport with you as you go along. You can even drip that through the entire contract so that they're getting different types of training at different times during not only them being a client. You can do that through the sales call. We actually, in our sales process, after you've booked a call, the next email you get gives you a blog post, an interview, podcast interview that I've done, and it
Mhm.
also a video testimonial interview that I did with one of our former clients. And so you are coming into the sales process learning more about what we do, but you're also seeing me in action. And so you can understand, okay, I can trust this person and I would trust this person to help show me how to actually show up on podcasts in a way that is more than just like having a good conversation, right? So like you can use podcasts for more than just social media. Yes, you can use it for blogs as well. And I want to be clear, SEO is not dead, but it's transformed into other things, right? You're
Yep.
seeing more of search instead of search engine. You're seeing more search in our AI products. So like ChatGPT and all the likes, they're still now having to pull and prove that their answers or whatever are correct. And they're pulling from people's blogs. They're pulling from websites. They're pulling. So if you're consistently upgrading or updating your website with information and actually pulling in your podcast interviews that you have on a consistent basis, you're going to be found. Putting clips on Pinterest and not just putting it on the quote unquote regular social media as well is great, because Pinterest, unlike an Instagram, is a search engine in a lot of ways. And you can pin something from 4 years ago and someone searches and that pin is going to show up in their search.
Yeah, for sure.
Start thinking about like just different ways that you can leverage this one piece of content in sales, in other types of marketing, and even in your onboarding process. Like after the person has become a client, like I talked about the library piece. So there are ways for you to repurpose that is not just, hey, I'm going to post these reels, which is of course important because we just talked about you want to support the show that you've been on. That's one of the things that quote unquote grinds my gears. When people go on these shows and like don't post anything, don't even repost what the main host has posted.
Yeah.
What's even worse though, and has happened, is going on a podcast and that host not even promoting their own show.
Yeah.
That
sure.
irks me. That irks me. I'm like, why am I posting more than you? I'm the guest. This is your podcast. What is going on here?
Right? It hurts my soul too. Don't worry.
It's annoying.
Most of the time that means that they don't have a team behind them that has the capacity to create that type of high quality stuff.
Yeah. And if I'm being honest, those are the podcasts, with love that I avoid. Just again, I'm doing this for business purpose and you want to be intentional about that. The other thing, which I don't, actually, this matches for the next one for ROI. So I'll keep it to my.
Yeah. I think that was actually a good lead into ROI though, because it really is like everything has to be a business decision with a successful podcast. And that goes for the host. And I know that goes for the guest as well. But like, there are of course podcasters who make their podcast because they just are having fun and stuff. What I would argue though is that those podcasts tend to really not thrive in the long term because they're not thinking about how it can be sustainable. And so those people, that they can be great creators, but they're not necessarily businesses. And so what I'm here to focus on is the people who want to turn what they're passionate about into a long-term business. And so that comes down to making sure that you're able to track that ROI. And for hosts, there are a ton of different tools that you can use because you have the benefit of all of the analytics at your disposal. Right now, I think everyone who is in the podcasting game should be making sure that they have a video podcast because there is so much more. There are so many more tools that you can utilize on platforms like YouTube than you can just through your normal RSS feed. I'll put here that analytics can be overwhelming, but I do think that there are basically two things that you should just be looking out for when you're talking about your analytics as a podcast host on YouTube, which is the average length of viewing or average percentage viewed for the podcast and then click-through rate or not. Click-through rate is all about people actually choosing to watch through your thumbnails and your titles, and then average percentage viewed is how long somebody actually stays. So that's how engaging, that's your stories, that's all of those pieces being measured by how much value somebody is getting, whether they actually think that it's worth sticking around to the end of the episode. And so I think that's the non-paid stuff. That's the just basic. Does your podcast, is it healthy? Is making sure that you know those two numbers. Then if we're talking about a larger ROI, if we're talking about financials and everything, it's making sure that you have those back end, that elements that you have that sales funnel and that you can track through those. One of my favorite tools is I can't remember the name of it, but there's many different ones. But you can track how people move through your website, so you can actually watch their mouse move across your website and see where they're clicking, where they're stalling out, where they're leaving. All those types of things. You want to make sure that you have those tools plugged in for each stage so that you can really get to understand your audience and who within your target audience is clicking and moving through and continuing to progress, because those types of analytics make a huge difference in being able to make the right choices versus making confused or the wrong choices because you don't quite know what's what.
Yeah. So to that point for the guests, you want to make sure on our end, favorite tool is Bitly or anything like it. Because then you can actually create unique URLs for each podcast that you're on, even though they're all heading to the same page, right? And why that's important is if you are having multiple different campaigns running at the same time, meaning you're trying to target 2 to 3 different types of podcasts or industry or referral partners, whatever it might be, you can kind of tell, all right, I've gone on these podcasts in these different areas. I'm seeing a lot more people click on my website, and I'm seeing a lot more action in this arena or this in an industry or category or whatever. Let me focus in on that a lot more and see if I can like double, triple what's happening here. But you can also, and this is really important, see okay, I'm having hundreds of people click on this thing, and I've only had like 2 people book a call. There's a disconnect here, right? If clearly your message on the podcast is resonating, people are clicking on your sales page or on your lead magnet page or whatever, but they're not following through, something on that page isn't right.
Yep.
Right. And you can start testing messaging. You can even A/B test it as you're going on these podcasts. There's so much to test to get it like down to where you know for sure, okay, this page absolutely works for this particular type of audience. And so I'm going to go all the way in. The other thing that I want people to remember, it's not necessarily about the size of the show. It is about the engagement. So how many downloads does it have every month? Like, is it an active community? Because you want that level of trust. You want to borrow, I should say, that trust. If a host has a super active community that's like always in the comments, they're all like a ton of reviews, all these different things, you're like, okay, this for sure, I go on here, I kill this, especially if it's your ideal audience, you know, like that's going to be a good thing for your business, right? Especially if you have your messaging and stuff on the back end of your things going and ready. So like for ROI, I think the biggest thing is just like looking at your numbers, making sure that you're tracking the things that matter. And for us, it's like, again, download numbers, tracking how many people are actually clicking on your stuff versus, signing up or buying or whatever the case is. It's very similar to like if you were running ads, right? To figure out whether or not your ads are working.
Right. Yeah. 100%. No, it's super similar.
So that's a big one too. I also believe in like energy ROI.
What do you mean?
One of my favorite and least favorite conversations to have is with people who are like, I've been on 50 different podcasts. I'm like, oh, that's cute. How many leads did you get? How many people downloaded your freebie? How many book calls did you get? How many clients did you get that you can track directly from your podcast? And then the like eyes go like, I don't know. Yeah. Going on all these podcasts and having nothing to show for it is not a brag to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that I have not been on over 100 podcasts, but I've made almost over $100,000 this year on podcasts alone.
Yeah, that's it.
I'd rather that number. So
Yeah.
for these people like, I've been on 500, I'm like, that's great. If you have not made $500,000, I don't want to talk to you. Like, for what?
Yeah,
So
yeah, you have to make sure that you're able to track what those results are so that you can actually know whether it's working for you or not.
yeah, it seems simple, but I think as people get caught up in the cuteness of it all, we forget to put in the part that matters the most, which is analytics and iterating after analyzing said analytics. It's one of the most crucial parts of it. And I didn't used to actually talk about that in my sales calls, right? It was always a part of our offer, but I never thought like people would be interested in it. And so I was like, I don't care if they're interested in it. This is how, one, they're going to be able to see their results, but this is how we're going to be able to see their results.
Yeah.
I can't say, hey, we've made this person over $50,000, over the course of 6 months or whatever the case may be, if they're not tracking their stuff. If
Yep.
they can't tell me, oh, we know that these last 3 contracts came from podcast bookings, then I won't know and be able to do that. And that's definitely selfishly. Well, I'm like, hey, let's make sure that this is being tracked. Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing for advertisers. It's something that, is probably for a longer, different conversation, but you have to be able to track your metrics so that you can prove your worth to advertisers and so that you can negotiate for your best possible pay. So if you don't start building those out, you're not going to have a leg to stand on, and you're also not going to be able to determine what your own value is because you're not going to have numbers to actually back anything up.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the only people that was pretty good at tracking her numbers was able to track multiple 5-figure contracts back to the podcast she's been on. And she started at our lower tier. And because she was able to track and we were able to have that conversation, I upsold her to our second tier. And now like we're killing it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have known to, hey, let's go to the second tier if she wasn't tracking and knowing, oh, multiple of these deals came through the work that I was doing with you guys. I wouldn't have known that. And so, like I said, selfishly, like, please help us to sell and track your stuff. Okay. So we have a bonus, right? And
yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So how do you choose the right guest? I mean, really, this comes down to knowing who your target audience is. And so that, like, what I like to think about is that when you first start out, you might think you know who your target audience is. But as you create your show and you keep iterating on it, you're going to continue to identify further and further who that target audience is, and they're going to have insights into what type of guests they want to see. So you need to have that communication because that's going to help you deliver the information that your audience is looking for. The other element of it is being really engaged in your industry. You don't want to just count on trying to find just the most standard guests that are kind of going everywhere, because oftentimes if you chase just like those types of guests, the ones that every other podcast has on, what you'll find is really diminishing returns because the audience is hearing from those people everywhere. And so there's not new, unique information. You want to seek out people who really have an interesting story to tell that resonates with you and that you think will resonate with your audience. And so that, I think, is like the best way to choose the right guest. The other way is, working with people like you who have good guests to work with.
Yeah. So yeah, how do you choose the best podcast? Couple of things. Or the first thing is obviously looking to make sure that they still accept guests, or that the format for the show is that they have guests. Um, you'd be surprised how many people don't check that first. Two, you want to make sure that it's still active, meaning that they're still posting new shows and they're promoting said new shows.
Mhm.
Three, you want to make sure that this is not someone who is, doing the exact same thing as you. Because if they are, you can still pitch them, but your pitch will have to be different. It'll have to kind of, it will be unique versus some the other types of pitches that you would send to
Mhm.
folks that are not like dead in your kind of whatever. And also, like, you're going on their platform, the people that are coming in like already trust them. It doesn't always give you the kind of return that you would want. So make sure that you're not like, do your due diligence in looking into the host itself, not just looking, oh, it's a cool podcast name or a cool
Yep.
podcast description. Then you also want to look in their analytics, like how many downloads do they have per month? Period. Like that's probably like the top thing that we look at.
Mhm.
It's not about the top 1%, top 10%, top 5%. How many people are actively wanting to listen to this podcast on a month-to-month basis? Because if you can get 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 30,000 people, and because you're seeing that the average is in that range, then you can start to, like we talked about before, preparing for that, right? Making sure that you have everything in place. Another thing that I think you should be kind of looking to is listen to the podcast. New idea. Listen to the podcast.
Gold.
Make sure that the host, at the very least, feels like someone you'd want to have a conversation with. Not all hosts are created equal. Also, not all shows are created the same. Some podcast hosts, they actually have questions that they send you beforehand, and those are the questions. Some
Mhm.
other podcast hosts don't have questions at all, and it's just kind of like free balling, and you have to figure it out. There are podcast hosts that will absolutely promote you as you're on the show. They'll talk about your business even before you do, and like really, really good at that. And there are other hosts that will not do that, and they like frown on that whole thing. So you have to really do your research beforehand. And I think a lot of people talk about the pitching, they don't talk about the research. To get to the part where you're pitching shows, you have to actually select the right ones. And so some of the things that I just talked about, plus a whole bunch, it's super important. That's the reason why we actually created a rubric for our agency, to just make it easier to be like, all right, did they get to this many points? If not, next. We don't even bother, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that for sure is super important. So that's the bonus.
I love it. Yeah, that was really
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Carolee, thanks for being on this, doing this. I think there was just an absolute ton of value here.
Yeah.
For my part, if you're interested in Podfluence's services, if you have a podcast or you're thinking about getting a podcast started, you can always go on to podfluence.com, where you can learn more about us, and then also book a free service demo where we'll walk you through our services. But more importantly, we'll take a look at, the ways that you can continue to grow the podcast and opportunities for that improvement.
Amazing. Okay. So if you are looking at this, more than likely you're connected with me. And so you should be familiar maybe with the Podcast Pitching Society. However, I should let you know that we, for the first time ever, have decided to launch a digital product. And that digital product is strictly about pitching. I mentioned just now that, research is really important for the pitching process. So, in addition to the actual digital product, we have 5 different bonuses. Count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different bonuses that we are also giving away on the first day that this goes live on November 24th. And one of those bonuses is where we do the research for you and we actually give you 6 right fit podcasts right out of the gate. And it's actually free. So you're getting all of the stuff that's in the kit, and you're also going to get 6 right fit podcasts that we're going to do the research for. We're going to get all that. We're going to give you that list with the contact information for all of these shows, all the information that you'll need to actually go and pitch these shows immediately. We're giving you that plus 4 other bonuses. So the waitlist is officially open. I'm going to drop the link in the chat in the comments. And if you would love to join the waitlist, only the people on the waitlist are going to actually have access to getting that 6 podcasts, right fit podcast list. Only the people on the waitlist. I want to repeat, only the people on the waitlist, because we're not actually going to drop the entire kit until the day after the folks that are on the waitlist have an opportunity to get all the things. And so please do not wait. I know it's called a wait list, but do not wait until the last minute and be like, oh, Carrolee, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm going to tell you, it's too bad. Like, that was yesterday. We're done. So waitlist is finally open. I'm super excited about it. We've never done this before. Everything has always been done for you. And so now we have a DIY option for pitching. And so if you've been thinking about working with us, but you don't have your coins together, this is a perfect opportunity to get in where you fit in. And this is also an opportunity to start somewhere. Just start. So grab the wait list or grab your spot on the wait list, and I will see you inside.
Ooh, that's so exciting.
It is. So this was awesome. I'm very excited. We have to do this again. Maybe like give them 6 months to implement some of the things and have questions, right? We'll have to do this again. And thank you so much. By the way, we met. Where did we meet?
We met at Podcast Movement.
Yes, in Dallas. Both of our first times at the conference.
Yep.
And this is like, we decided, hey, we're going to do this. I think this has been a wonderful referral partnership, and Podfluence is really, really awesome. They have quality production. And I'm just excited to see you guys grow and blossom in all things. So
I'm so excited for you guys too. It has been awesome. And I couldn't recommend people going to things like Podcast Movement as podcasters and as podcast guests, because you meet so many cool people. So I am also so stoked to see the Podcast Pitching Society continue to crush it.
Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.